April 27, 2011, 4:43 in the afternoon, Central Alabama. A tornado touches down in rural Greene County. It is 1.5 miles wide. Its winds are touching 190 miles per hour, and it is moving northeast, directly toward the city of Tuscaloosa. In the next hour and a half, it will not lift. It will not slow. It will carve an 80-mile scar of destruction across two of the most populated cities in the state. 64 people will die from that single tornado alone. But here is what makes April 27, 2011 truly incomprehensible. That was not the deadliest tornado of the day. By the time the sun set over Alabama, 62 tornadoes had touched down across the state in less than 18 hours. 238 Alabamans were dead. It is the single deadliest day in the state's recorded history. But to understand how one Wednesday in April became a catastrophe unlike anything America had seen since 1925, you have to go back to the atmosphere, back to the physics, and back to a warning system that, despite being nearly perfect that day, still could not outrun the storm. Alabama sits at one of the most dangerous intersections of air on the planet. To the south, the Gulf of Mexico, an open pipeline of warm, moisture-saturated air pushing north. To the west, dry air rolling in from Mexico and the Great Plains, and high above, cold air cascading down from Canada. When these systems collide over the deep south, the atmosphere becomes a pressure cooker, and in late April, the lid comes off. Meteorologists had been watching this one for a week. The Storm Prediction Center's models were pointing to what they call a high-risk day, a designation so rare it is reserved for events where widespread violent tornadoes are not just possible, but expected. By the morning of April 27th, they had issued a 45% probability of tornadoes along a corridor stretching from Meridian, Mississippi to Huntsville, Alabama. 45%. That is not a warning. That is a near certainty. The conditions were what scientists would later describe as among the most conducive to violent tornadoes ever documented. Atmospheric instability, measured in what meteorologists call CAPE values, was running between 2,000 and 3,000 joules per kilogram. Wind shear, the rotational force that spins supercell thunderstorms into tornado factories, was registering between 450 and 600 square meters per second. For reference, on a typical severe weather day, half those values would produce a significant tornado. This was not a typical severe weather day, and the people of Alabama were about to find out exactly what that meant. At 4:01 in the morning, the first wave arrives. A line of severe thunderstorms sweeps across northern Alabama while most people are still asleep. What is unusual is what those storms leave behind. Damaged equipment at television stations across the state, including at Birmingham's ABC 3340, where Chief Meteorologist James Spann is already on air. Spann had gotten the call around 4 a.m. He took the fastest shower of his life, drove to the station, and went live. His engineers are now scrambling to fix broadcast equipment damaged by the morning round, because the second wave, the one the models have been screaming about for days, is still coming. At 11:15 a.m., the second wave hits. More tornadoes, more damage, more deaths. By early afternoon, the Storm Prediction Center upgrades the outlook. A particularly dangerous situation tornado watch, the highest tier of alert, is issued for northern Alabama and southern Tennessee. The bulletin reads, "Destructive tornadoes. Large hail to 4 inches in diameter." At 2:40 p.m., the third and final wave begins to organize across Mississippi. Supercells, massive rotating thunderstorm systems, begin to line up to the southwest of Alabama like aircraft on a runway. Everything accelerated. At 3 p.m., a supercell crosses into Marion County, Alabama. It begins to rotate. Within minutes, a wedge tornado, wide, low, and violent, drops from its base. This is the Hackleburg to Phil Campbell tornado, and it will not lift for 102 miles. On the ground in Hackleburg, plant manager Hagedorn receives the tornado warning at his Wrangler distribution facility, a factory that has employed this small rural community since 1981. He spots a worker in the parking lot. With the tornado audible in the distance, Supervisor Roger Kendrick pulls the man inside and shouts to every worker on the floor, "Get under a desk." Nobody asks questions. They just do it. While Hackleburg braces, 80 miles to the east, James Spann is tracking a different supercell, one producing a large wedge tornado over rural Greene County and moving northeast, directly toward Tuscaloosa. Spann is live. He has been live for hours. His voice is steady, but he later describes the afternoon as bullets from hell. By 4 p.m., multiple violent tornadoes are simultaneously on the ground across Alabama. At peak intensity, the atmosphere above the state contains more destructive energy than at any point since April 3, 1974. What the people of Alabama don't know is that the worst of it hasn't arrived yet. At 4:43 p.m., the Tuscaloosa tornado makes landfall in Greene County. It is initially rated EF2. Within minutes, it intensifies. By the time it reaches the city limits of Tuscaloosa, it is a high-end EF4 multi-vortex wedge tornado. With peak winds of 190 miles per hour and a damage path 1.5 miles wide. For reference, an EF4 tornado does not leave buildings damaged. It erases them. Several television stations capture the tornado live as it moves through the city. The footage shows a wall of brown and black rotating debris filling the screen, consuming entire city blocks. Debris from Tuscaloosa is later found falling from the sky over Birmingham, more than 20 miles away. In the Rosedale Apartments, a public housing complex on the southwest end of the city, 124 residential units are destroyed in under 2 minutes. 9 residents are killed. Housing Authority official Willie Fort arrives shortly after and says that when he got to Rosedale, he could not believe it. He says the tornado made this look like a war zone. John Nero, 58, loses the home he has lived in for 20 years. His wife suffers a heart attack in the days that follow. A brick from a nearby church tears through his home and slams into his upper leg. He keeps that brick. Years later, he says God kept him here to get some things straight. Sonia Moore and her family have just moved into their new Tuscaloosa home. They have not even finished unpacking. She pulls her children into a closet. The door flies open. The wind reaches inside and begins pulling her youngest child up off the ground. They grab him and pull him back down. They survive. Nearly everything around them does not. Meanwhile, 80 miles to the west, the Hackleburg tornado has already passed. The Wrangler factory is gone. An EF5, rated at winds of 210 miles per hour, it has killed 1 employee despite everyone sheltering in place. 71 people are dead along its 102-mile track. 75% of Hackleburg, a town of 1,500, is destroyed. Hackleburg High School is gone. Every downtown business is gone. It is the deadliest single tornado to strike the state of Alabama in recorded history. By 9 p.m., the storms begin to exit the state. The final count is 62 tornadoes in Alabama alone. 4 of them are rated EF5, with winds above 200 miles per hour. In a normal year, the United States averages 1 EF5 tornado. On April 27, 2011, Alabama saw 4. By midnight, most of the storms had exited the state. Alabama Power lost entire substations across the state. Nearly 200 power poles in Cullman County alone were leveled. More than 4,000 workers mobilized to begin restoration. Some residents will not have power for another week. President Obama flew to Tuscaloosa on April 29th. He toured the wreckage on foot. Afterward, he said he had never seen devastation like this. He declared a federal state of emergency in Alabama. In Hackleburg, the question everyone was asking was not about roads or homes. It was about Wrangler. The factory employed a significant portion of the town's 1,500 residents. Parent company VF Corp launched an economic analysis about whether to rebuild or to walk away. The town held its breath. The full scale of the damage would take days to confirm. The final numbers, when they came, did not feel real. The final death toll from the 2011 super outbreak was 348 people across the United States. 238 of them were in Alabama. It was the deadliest tornado outbreak since 1925. Total damage reached $10.2 billion, the costliest tornado disaster in American history. James Spann spent over 12 consecutive hours live on air that day. He did not speak publicly about April 27, 2011 for 6 months. He describes the period that followed as a grieving process. When he finally did speak, he had one central question. Why did so many people die when the warnings were, by every scientific measure, excellent? His answer was the siren mentality. An 80% false alarm rate for tornado warnings had conditioned people across Alabama to wait, to listen for outdoor sirens before taking cover. Those sirens were built for people who are outside. They do not reliably reach people inside buildings. And on April 27, 2011, most people were inside. A medical study of all 247 Alabama fatalities confirms the picture. At least 41% of those who died had received some form of warning before the tornado struck. Only 15% heard a siren. Word of mouth was the most common warning. 22% of survivors later screened positive for PTSD. After 2011, the National Weather Service worked to cut the false alarm rate roughly in half. Smartphone technology transformed real-time storm tracking. Satellite imagery that once refreshed every 10 to 15 minutes now updates every 30 seconds. The lessons of April 27th are built into every severe weather system operating in this country today. In Hackleburg, the Wrangler Distribution Center reopened in spring 2013. It was rebuilt on the exact footprint of what was destroyed. The community had held its breath for 2 years. The new building is a symbol, not of what was lost, of what refused to leave. In Tuscaloosa, more than $1 billion in public and private investment has gone into the city's recovery zone. But Mayor Walt Maddox is honest about what remains. Today, there are still scars you can see in our city, he says, and I suspect that 10 years from now, some of those scars may still exist. That's how devastating that tornado was. Deborah Purser of Hackleburg put it simply, the sky even gets dark, and my niece goes to pieces. She starts shaking. That is the true legacy of April 27, 2011. Not the records, not the damage totals, not the scientific papers. It is the way a single Wednesday afternoon rewired an entire state, the way it lives on in the people who survived it. In the rebuilt towns that no longer feel like the towns they remember. In a meteorologist who still has not fully processed everything he witnessed that day and says he does not think he ever will. 62 tornadoes, 18 hours, 1 state, 238 names. James Spann is trying to memorize every single one of them.